Captain Han Sol stood on the bridge of the Earthship Horizon, staring at the massive structure floating in space before them. The Galactic Council Station was bigger than any human-made building. It looked like a giant wheel made of silver and blue metal, spinning slowly against the black sky filled with stars. "Sir, we're getting the final approach instructions," said Lieutenant Jiwoo from her communications post. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as alien voices spoke, in languages no human had heard before today. Han Sol nodded and looked at the woman standing beside him. Ambassador Yejin wore the formal blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her face showed calm confidence, but Han Sol could see the worry in her eyes. This was the most important moment in human history. 47 years, Yejin said quietly. 47 years since we built our first ship that could travel faster than light. 47 years of exploring empty star systems while wondering if we were alone in the universe. And now we know we're not, Han Sol replied. The first contact had happened 6 months ago. A council ship had appeared near Earth's moon, broadcasting messages of peace and friendship. They spoke of a great alliance of species that ruled most of the galaxy. They invited humanity to join them. The council station grew larger as the horizon moved closer. Han Sol could see other ships docked around the station. Some looked like huge insects made of metal. Others were smooth and round like pearls. A few seemed to be made of crystal that caught and bent the light from nearby stars. "Captain, they're asking us to dock at Port 7, Jiwoo reported. "Take us in," Han Sol ordered. Dr. So Min walked onto the bridge carrying a tablet computer. She was Earth's best expert on alien life, even though she had never seen a real alien before today. "I've been studying the translation software they gave us," she said. "Something seems strange about it." "Strange how?" Yejin asked. "The words they use don't always match what I think they mean. When they talk about integration, the computer translates it as joining together, but the way they say it sounds more like ownership." Han Sol frowned. "Are you sure?" "No," So-Min admitted. "I could be wrong. This is all new to us, but my gut tells me to be careful." The horizon docked with a soft bump. Through the windows, they could see the docking tube extending from the station to connect with their ship. In a few minutes, they would be breathing alien air and walking on alien ground. "Remember the plan," Yejin said to her team. "We listen more than we talk. We ask questions about everything, and we don't agree to anything without discussing it first." The airlock opened with a hiss. Cool air flowed in, carrying strange smells, like metal and flowers and something else they couldn't identify. Han Sol stepped through first, followed by Yejin and the rest of the diplomatic team. The corridor on the other side was huge. The ceiling rose high above their heads, and the walls curved in a way that made Han Sol feel small. Soft blue light came from panels in the walls, and there was a humming sound like distant music. "Welcome, humans of Earth," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Please follow the guide lights to the council chambers." Points of golden light appeared on the floor, forming a path deeper into the station. The human team followed them through corridors filled with wonders. They passed windows that showed views of space and distant planets. They saw gardens where strange plants grew in impossible colors. They walked by pools of water that defied gravity, flowing upward in spirals and loops. Other beings moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, but were covered in fur or scales. Others floated through the air or crawled along the walls. A few were so strange that the humans couldn't understand how they moved at all. "Incredible," whispered Engineer Taeho, who had joined the team to study alien technology. "Look at those power conduits. They're using some kind of quantum energy I've never seen before." The path led them to a vast circular chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. In the center of the room was a raised platform. where two beings waited for them. One looked like a giant snake that stood upright, with smooth green skin and yellow eyes. The other was made of what looked like living crystal, changing colors as it moved. "I am Coordinator Veltar," said the snake-like being. Its voice was deep and smooth. "And this is Chancellor Crix. We speak for the Galactic Council." The crystal being's voice sounded like wind chimes. "We are pleased to meet the humans of Earth. We have watched your species with great interest." Yejin stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Ambassador Yejin, representing Earth and all humanity. We are honored by your invitation." "Your species shows promise," Veltar said. "In only 47 years, you have built ships that can cross the stars. Most species take centuries to reach this level." "We are impressed by your rapid development," Crix added. "This is why the Council wishes to offer you membership in our alliance." "What would membership mean for humanity?" Yejin asked carefully. Veltar's yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Protection from hostile species, access to our technology and knowledge, guidance as you take your place among the stars. The Council has brought peace to thousands of worlds," Crix said. "We can do the same for Earth." They spent the next several hours in discussions. The Council representatives showed them holographic displays of their vast territory. Hundreds of star systems, thousands of worlds, all living in peace under Council rule. They spoke of trade routes that would bring wealth to Earth. They promised technology that would solve humanity's problems with energy and disease. But Dr. So-Min noticed things that worried her. When Veltar talked about guidance, his body, language suggested control. When Crix mentioned appropriate development, the crystal being's colors shifted in a way that seemed threatening. And when they discussed which star systems humans would be allowed to settle, the areas shown were far from the main trade routes and major worlds. "This is a generous offer," Yejin said finally. "But such an important decision requires careful consideration. We need time to discuss this with our leaders on Earth." "Of course," Veltar said, but his tone suggested impatience. "However, this opportunity will not remain open forever. Other species compete for Council attention." "We understand," Yejin replied. "How long do we have to decide?" "1 of your months should be sufficient," Crix answered. "We will provide you with the integration protocols to study. They contain all the details of membership." As the meeting ended, the humans were given quarters on the station and access to Council databases. But Dr. So-Min couldn't shake her feeling that something was wrong. That night, she sat in her room studying the translation software, trying to understand what the Council representatives had really been saying. Outside her window, the galaxy stretched endlessly into the dark. Somewhere out there were the answers to her questions. She just hoped they would find them before it was too late. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Yejin stood in the United Nations building in New York, watching the final vote on humanity's future. The debate had been fierce. Some leaders wanted to accept the Council's offer immediately. Others shared Dr. So-Min's concerns about the strange wording in the integration protocols. "The vote is decided," announced Secretary General Kim. "By a margin of 53%, Earth accepts membership in the Galactic Council." Yejin felt her heart sink. She had argued against the decision, but the promise of advanced technology and protection from hostile aliens had won the day. Too many leaders saw only the benefits and ignored the warnings. 2 months after the vote, the first Council ships arrived at Earth. They were beautiful vessels that gleamed like silver in the sunlight. The aliens who came down to the planet's surface were polite and helpful. They set up offices in major cities and began the integration process. Engineer Taeho was assigned to work with the Council's technology division. He stood in the massive facility they had built outside Seoul, staring at the quantum drive engines they were installing in human ships. "These are incredible," said his assistant, Engineer Min-Soo. "They can make a ship travel 10 times faster than our best engines." Taeho nodded, but something bothered him. Why are they installing them themselves? They said they would teach us how to build our own. Maybe they want to make sure we do it right, Minsu suggested. But when Taeho tried to examine the engines more closely, the council technicians politely but firmly stopped him. Safety protocols, they explained. These systems are too dangerous for untrained personnel to handle. Across the galaxy, human ships began traveling to their new home systems. Captain Hansol commanded one of the colony ships heading to the Kepler sector. The systems they were assigned were far from Earth, in a quiet part of the galaxy that seemed empty of other civilizations. Strange, commented Navigator Dalsu as he studied the star charts. All the systems they're giving us are at least 50 light years from the nearest council worlds. Maybe they want to give us space to develop on our own, Hansol suggested, but he didn't really believe it. The ships arrived at New Sol, humanity's first colony world in council space. It was a beautiful planet with blue oceans and green continents, but it had no valuable minerals or strategic importance. The other worlds in their assigned territory were similar, nice places to live, but poor in resources. Back on Earth, communications. Specialist Ji Woo worked in the new council monitoring station. Her job was to help coordinate communications between Earth and the human colonies, but she quickly noticed that all their messages were being filtered through council systems. We can't send direct messages to our colonies, she told her supervisor, Colonel Park. Everything has to go through their relay stations. They explained that, Park replied. It's for security reasons, to protect us from hostile interceptors. But Jiwoo had been trained in military communications. She knew the difference between security measures and surveillance. The council wasn't protecting human communications, they were monitoring them. Dr. Somin spent her time studying in the council's vast database library. She had access to information about thousands of species and worlds. But when she tried to research the history of council expansion, she found that many records were restricted. I'm sorry, said the council librarian, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Flux. That information is classified above your clearance level. When will humans get higher clearance? So-Min asked. After the integration period is complete, perhaps in 10 or 20 years. 10 or 20 years. So-Min realized that humans were being treated like children who couldn't be trusted with important information. She began to search more carefully, looking for clues in the unrestricted files. What she found made her blood run cold. There were references to dozens of species that had joined the council over the past 1,000 years, species that had been integrated and given territory on the outer edges of council space. But when she tried to find current information about these species, the files were empty or marked as archived. She brought her concerns to Ambassador Ye Jin, who was still working at the council station. They met in private, away from the monitoring devices that the council claimed were for their protection. I think we made a terrible mistake, So-Min said. The species that joined the council before us, I can't find any evidence that they still exist as independent civilizations. Ye Jin frowned. What do you mean? I mean they're gone, absorbed. The Alterans joined the council 200 years ago. According to the records, they were given a dozen star systems in the Outer Rim. But when I check current population data, those systems show council administrative personnel, not Alterans. Maybe they moved to other worlds, Ye Jin suggested hopefully. Maybe. But the same pattern exists for every species. They join the council, get assigned to remote territories, and then disappear from the records after a few decades. That night, Ye Jin couldn't sleep. She walked the corridors of the council station, thinking about So-Min's discovery. The station was quiet at this hour, with most beings resting in their quarters. But as she passed a restricted section, she heard voices. She recognized Coordinator. Veltar's deep tones, but he was speaking in his own language, not the translated common tongue used in official meetings. Yejin activated her personal recorder and listened carefully. Her translation software worked slowly on the alien words. When it finished processing, the message made her feel sick. Phase 1. Integration of the humans proceeds on schedule. Their military forces are being dispersed to the outer territories as planned. Once their fleets are separated and their home world is isolated, we can begin Phase 2. Another voice, Chancellor Crix, responded, "Excellent. How long until their technology can be fully integrated into our systems? 6 months for complete analysis. Their computer systems show promise, and their genetic diversity will be useful for our labor programs. And their home world? Resource extraction can begin as soon as Phase 2 is complete. The planet contains significant mineral wealth, and the population can be relocated to processing facilities." Yejin backed away from the door, her heart pounding. The Council wasn't integrating humanity, they were conquering it. The generous offer of membership was a trap, and Earth had walked right into it. She had to warn the others, but how? All communications were monitored. Any suspicious activity would be detected immediately. She needed time to think and plan. As she returned to her quarters, Yejin realized that humanity's real test was just beginning. They had been deceived by beings who had perfected the art of peaceful conquest. But humans had one advantage the Council might not expect. They had never learned to surrender without a fight. The question was whether they could organize resistance before Phase 2 began. The clock was ticking, and Earth's freedom hung in the balance. Communications specialist Ji Woo had always been good at finding hidden signals. During her training in the Earth Defense Force, she had learned to detect enemy transmissions buried in normal radio traffic. Now, working in the Council monitoring station, she used those same skills to listen for things she wasn't supposed to hear. It started with small inconsistencies, messages between Council officials that didn't match the friendly attitude they showed to humans, references to processing schedules and resource extraction timelines that made no sense for a peaceful alliance. Late one night, when the station was quiet, Ji Woo managed to tap into a restricted communication channel. Her equipment wasn't designed for this kind of work, but she had modified it using spare parts and clever programming. What she heard made her hands shake. "Subject-species integration at 70% completion," reported a voice speaking in the Common Council. Language: military assets successfully dispersed to outer territories. Home world defenses reduced to minimal levels. Another voice responded, "Understood. Proceed with resource assessment of primary planet. Begin preparation for Phase 2 population relocation. Estimated timeline for complete absorption? 6 months, as scheduled. This species follows the standard pattern. Their governments accepted the integration protocols without significant resistance." Ji Woo recorded everything, her heart racing. She knew what she was hearing. The Council discussing humanity like it was just another conquest, but she needed more evidence, something that would prove the scope of their deception. Over the next week, she intercepted dozens of similar transmissions. Slowly, a horrifying picture emerged. The Galactic Council wasn't an alliance of equals. It was an empire built on lies and deception. They would approach young civilizations with offers of friendship and membership. Once the species agreed to integration, the Council would systematically strip away their independence. The process was always the same. First, they would isolate the species' military forces by sending them to remote territories under the guise of colonization. Then they would take control of communication networks and transportation systems. Finally, they would begin resource optimization, stripping the home world of valuable materials and relocating the population to work camps disguised as development centers. But the most shocking discovery came when Ji Woo managed to access historical communication logs. She found records going back over 1,000 years, showing the same pattern repeated again and again. The Alterans had been a proud warrior culture with advanced weapons technology. The Council had approached them with offers of peace and trade. Within 50 years, Alterran worlds had become mining colonies staffed by Alterran slaves. The Zalani had been master shipbuilders whose vessels were considered the finest in the galaxy. The Council had praised their craftsmanship and invited them to share their knowledge. Now Zalani survivors worked in Council shipyards, building the very ships used to conquer other species. The Kythera had been brilliant scientists who had nearly achieved immortality through genetic engineering. The Council had offered to help them perfect their research. Instead, they had stolen the technology and used the Kythera as test subjects for biological experiments. 23 civilizations had fallen to the Council's deception. Each time, the pattern was identical. Each time, the species had believed they were joining a peaceful alliance right up until the end, and now it was humanity's turn. Jiwoo knew she had to get this information to the right people, but the Council monitored all communications. She couldn't send messages directly to Earth or the colonies without being detected. She needed help from someone who could move freely around the station. She found that person in Dr. So-min. "I need to show you something," Jiwoo said during their scheduled meeting in the station's research library. She had learned to be careful about when and where they talked. The Council's surveillance was extensive, but not perfect. She quietly shared her discoveries with So-min, showing her the recorded transmissions and historical data. So-min's face grew pale as she listened. 23 species, So-min whispered. "All of them gone. Not gone," Jiwoo corrected. "Enslaved. The Council keeps detailed records of their populations. They're used as workers, soldiers, test subjects. Some are even used as food for species that require live prey." So-min closed her eyes, trying to process the horror. "We have to warn Earth. We can't use normal communications. Everything is monitored, but I have an idea. The Council relies on their quantum communication network for coordination. If we could disrupt it temporarily, we might be able to send a message through their system without being traced." "That's incredibly dangerous," So-min said. "If they catch us, if we don't try, humanity ends up like the Alterrans and the Zalani. At least this way we have a chance." So-min nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Access to the station's main computer core. And we need Ambassador Ye-jin. She has the codes to authorize emergency transmissions to Earth." Finding Ye-jin was easier than expected. She had been conducting her own investigation, trying to understand why the Council seemed so secretive about their history. When they showed her the evidence, she was ready to act immediately. "I overheard something 3 days ago," Ye-jin told them. "Coordinator Veltar was talking about Phase 2 beginning in less than 6 months. I think that's when they plan to drop the pretense of friendship." "Then we don't have much time," Jiwoo said. "I need 12 hours to prepare the transmission equipment. Can you get me access to the computer core?" "I can arrange a maintenance inspection," Ye-jin said. "But once we send this message, there's no going back. The Council will know we discovered their plan." "Good," So-min said grimly. "Let them know. Maybe it will buy Earth time to prepare." The next night, they put their plan into action. Ye-jin used her diplomatic access to authorize a routine inspection of the communication systems. Jiwoo went to work immediately, connecting her modified equipment to the quantum relay network. "Encoding message now," she whispered into her communicator. "Dr. So-min, start uploading the historical files." So-min's fingers flew over her tablet as she transferred gigabytes of Council records, species profiles, conquest timelines, population management protocols. Everything that proved the truth about the Galactic Council. "Signal strength at maximum," Jiwoo reported. "Punching through to Earth Defense Command in 3, 2, 1. For a moment, nothing happened. Then alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed, and automated voices announced a security breach in the communication center. "Did it go through?" Yejin asked. Jiwoo checked her equipment. "Yes, full transmission completed. Earth has everything we found." The door to the computer core burst open. Council security forces rushed in, massive creatures empowered, armor that looked like mechanical insects. Behind them came Coordinator Veltar and Chancellor Crix. "Humans," Veltar said, his voice cold with anger. "You have violated the terms of your integration agreement." "We've told Earth the truth," Yejin said, standing straight despite her fear. "About what you really are. About what you do to species that trust you." Crix's crystal body shifted to a deep red color. "Truth is a relative concept, Ambassador. You have chosen to interpret our actions in the most negative light possible." "We've chosen to interpret your actions based on evidence," So-Min replied. "The records don't lie." "Records can be misleading," Veltar said. "The species that joined us before were failing civilizations. We saved them from extinction and gave their lives purpose." "By enslaving them," Jiwoo said. "By integrating them into something greater than themselves," Crix corrected. "As we had planned to do with humanity. Your interference has complicated that process considerably." Veltar stepped closer to the three humans. "No matter. Your transmission may have reached Earth, but it changes nothing. Your species is already committed to the integration process. Your fleets are scattered, your defenses are minimal, and your government has signed binding agreements. Phase 2 will proceed as scheduled. Earth will resist," Yejin said. "Earth will fall," Veltar replied. "As they all do, eventually. The only question is whether it falls quickly and with minimal suffering, or slowly and with maximum pain. That choice now rests with your leaders." As Council security forces led them away to detention cells, the three humans shared a grim satisfaction. They had done what they could. The warning had been sent. Now it was up to Earth to decide how to respond. In 6 months, they would learn whether humanity was different from the 23 species that had fallen before them, whether humans would find a way to fight back against an enemy that had perfected the art of bloodless conquest. The real war was about to begin. The emergency transmission reached Earth Defense Command at 0347 GMT. Admiral Yun-Su was awakened in her quarters by the urgent communication from her aide, Colonel Park. "Ma'am, we have a priority alpha message from the Council station. You need to see this immediately." Yun-Su threw on her uniform and rushed to the command center. What she saw on the screens made her blood run cold. Hours of recorded Council communications, historical records of conquered species, and detailed plans for humanity's subjugation. "Get me the president," she ordered, "and wake up every member of the Security Council. We're calling an emergency session." Within 6 hours, Earth's leadership was in crisis mode. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. For the first time in human history, they faced an enemy that could destroy them without firing a shot. "How long do we have?" asked President Lee during the emergency session. "According to the intercepted communications, Phase 2 begins in approximately 5 months, Admiral Yun-Su reported. That's when they plan to begin resource extraction and population relocation." "Our fleets are scattered across the galaxy," General Kim pointed out. "Captain Han Sol's colony ships are 50 light-years away. Commander Dal Su's survey groups are even further out. We can't recall them without the Council noticing." "Maybe we're not supposed to recall them," Dr. Haiwan said. She was the Earth's chief xenolinguist and had been studying the translation problems Dr. So-Min had identified. "Maybe we need to think differently about this." "What do you mean?" the President asked. "The Council has conquered 23 species using the same strategy every time. They expect us to react the same way, try to gather our forces, build defenses around Earth, fight a conventional war we can't win." Admiral Yun-Su nodded slowly. "But what if we don't follow the script?" That night, a very different kind of meeting took place in a secure facility deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Un-Soo, General Kim, and a handful of Earth's top military leaders gathered around a table with an empty chair. On the screen above them appeared the face of Captain Han Sol, transmitting from the colony ship New Sol 50 light-years away. "Captain, how much do your council minders know about human military doctrine?" Admiral Yun-Su asked. "Very little," Han Sol replied. "They observe our training exercises, but we've been careful to make them look routine. They don't seem interested in our tactical capabilities, only our compliance with integration protocols." "Good, because we're going to need every advantage we can get." Over the next week, a secret communication network began to form. Using techniques developed by communications specialist Ji Woo before her capture, Earth's scattered forces found ways to talk to each other without the Council detecting their messages. The network grew beyond Earth's military. Human colonists in the outer systems began reporting strange contacts, beings who approached them in secret, speaking in whispers about resistance and rebellion. Commander Dal Su was leading a survey mission near the Vega system when it happened. His ship was conducting routine scans of an asteroid field when his sensors detected a small craft hiding among the rocks. "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Dal Su of the Earthship Explorer. Please identify yourself." The response came in broken, heavily accented English. "Friends. Hidden friends. We talk, yes?" The small craft was unlike anything in Council databases. It looked old and patched together from salvaged parts. When it docked with the Explorer, Dalsu found himself face-to-face with a being he didn't recognize. Humanoid, but covered in blue-gray fur with large eyes that seemed to hold deep sadness. "I am Keth," the being said. "Last Admiral of Alteran Defense Force. Been hiding for 40 years since Council took my worlds." Dalsu stared at him. "The Alterans weren't destroyed?" "Not destroyed, enslaved, but some escaped. Some still fight. Been waiting for new species strong enough to resist. Maybe humans are that species." Keth's story unfolded over the next several hours. When the Council had begun Phase 2 of Alteran integration, a small group of military officers had refused to surrender. They had stolen ships and escaped to the Outer Rim, where they had been hiding ever since. Others, too, Keth explained. Zelani shipbuilders, Kithara scientists, survivors from 12 species, all hiding, all waiting. Waiting for what? For species with military strength, Council fears. Humans show promise. Your weapons technology crude but effective. Your tactical thinking unusual. Council not prepared for human war methods. That night, Dalsu transmitted everything to Admiral Yun-Su using the secret communication protocols. The response came back within hours. "Establish contact with all resistance groups. We need allies, intelligence, and most importantly, we need to know the Council's weaknesses." The network continued to grow. Engineer Tae Ho, still working with Council technology on Earth, began secretly analyzing the quantum drives they had installed on human ships. What he found was disturbing, but also encouraging. "They're not just monitoring our ships," he reported to Admiral Yun-Su during a covert meeting. "They've installed control systems. If they want to, they can shut down any ship with a Council drive system." "That's what I was afraid of," Yun-Su said. "But there's good news, too. The control system has a weakness. It relies on quantum entanglement with the Council's command network. If we could disrupt that network, their control systems would fail." "Could we build weapons to do that?" Tae-Ho smiled grimly. "We already have them. The EMP charges we developed for disabling enemy electronics should work perfectly. The Council's technology is actually more vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses than our own systems." Meanwhile, Dr. Do-Yan was working on a different kind of weapon, information warfare. As Earth's leading expert on computer systems, she had been studying the Council's data networks and finding ways to exploit them. They're incredibly advanced in some areas, she explained to the War Council. But they've been using the same basic network architecture for thousands of years. They never had to worry about cyber attacks because all their member species were completely integrated into their system. What does that mean for us? General Kim asked. It means they're not prepared for someone who understands their networks but isn't part of them. With the right virus, we could potentially crash their entire communication system. As the secret preparations continued, Diplomatic Corps Officer Minho played perhaps the most dangerous role of all. He had been assigned to work with Council, officials on Earth, helping to coordinate the integration process. But instead of facilitating their plans, he was feeding them carefully crafted misinformation. The Council believes our industrial capacity is much lower than it actually is, he reported during a secure meeting. They think our population is less organized and our military is less capable. I've been showing them our oldest facilities and our most basic equipment. How long can you keep that up? Admiral Yun-Su asked. Not much longer. They're getting suspicious about why they haven't seen our newest ships or our primary manufacturing centers. But I might be able to buy us another month or two. Every piece of intelligence that came in painted the same picture. The Council was incredibly powerful, but they had grown complacent. They had conquered so many species using the same methods that they couldn't imagine anyone fighting back effectively. But the Resistance Network was also discovering something else. The Council wasn't as united as they appeared. Different factions within their leadership competed for power and resources. Some Council species were more loyal than others, and the farther from the Council's core worlds you went, the more resentment you found among the conquered populations. We can't beat them in a straight fight, Admiral Yun-Su told the assembled resistance leaders during a holographic conference call that included Keth and several other alien survivors. But we might not need to. If we can disrupt their control systems, liberate enough of their conquered species, and hit them fast enough across multiple fronts. You think we can actually win? Asked Prex, a former Zalani admiral whose shipbuilding skills had been invaluable to the Resistance. I think we can give them something they've never faced before, Yun-Su replied. A real war. Not a peaceful conquest, not a gradual absorption, but a fight where the outcome isn't predetermined. Keth's large eyes gleamed with an emotion he hadn't felt in 40 years. Hope. When do we begin? Soon, Yun-Su said. Very soon. But first, we need to get our people back. The rescue of Ambassador Ye Jin, Dr. So-min, and communications specialist Ji Woo from the Council Station would be the first test of the Resistance Network's capabilities. It would also be the signal that humanity was ready to fight. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were very different from the 23 species that had fallen before them. The Council's perfect record was about to be broken. On the surface, Earth continued to follow the Council's integration protocols perfectly. Human officials attended meetings, filed reports, and followed every procedure exactly as required. But beneath this facade of cooperation, the largest deception in human history was taking place. Dr. Do-Yan stood in a laboratory hidden 3 kilometers below the Canadian wilderness, surrounded by Earth's most advanced computer systems. These facilities didn't exist in any Council database. As far as the aliens knew, humanity's computer technology was primitive compared to their own quantum networks. Status report, Admiral Yun-Su said as she entered the secure facility. We're ready, Do-Yan replied, gesturing to banks of servers that hummed with quiet power. The virus is complete. When we activate it, it will spread through every Council quantum communication node in this sector of the galaxy. Their command network will be down for at least 6 hours, maybe longer. What about their ships? Any vessel using Council technology will lose navigation, communication, and weapons control. They'll be flying blind and defenseless. In another hidden facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, engineer Taeho was putting the finishing touches on humanity's secret weapon. The Council had been so confident in their technology that they had never bothered to study human electromagnetic pulse weapons. "The beauty of it is simplicity," Tejo explained to the assembled technicians. "Their quantum drives are incredibly sophisticated, but they're also incredibly fragile. One focused EMP burst and they'll shut down completely." "How many ships can we disable?" asked Captain Yoon, one of the few military officers who had remained hidden on Earth. "Every Council ship in this system," Tejo said confidently. "And if we coordinate with the resistance cells in other systems, we can take out their entire fleet simultaneously." Meanwhile, Diplomatic Corps Officer Min Ho was playing his most dangerous game yet. He sat across from Council Administrator Thex in the Integration Office in Geneva, filing reports that painted humanity as weak and disorganized. "Industrial output in the Asian sectors is lower than expected," Min Ho reported, showing carefully doctored statistics. "Many of our manufacturing facilities are operating below capacity due to technical difficulties with Council upgrades." Thex, a multi-armed creature that looked like a mechanical spider, clicked its mandibles in what might have been disappointment. "This is concerning. We had hoped human industry would be more adaptable." "We're working to improve efficiency," Min Ho said smoothly, "but it may take longer than originally projected." What Thex didn't know was that Earth's real industrial capacity had tripled in the past 3 months. Hidden factories were working around the clock, producing EMP weapons, armored vehicles, and modified ships that could operate without Council technology. The technical difficulties Min Ho reported were actually humanity's greatest military buildup in history. 50 light-years away, Captain Han Sol was conducting his own deception. The Council believed he was establishing peaceful colonies on remote worlds. In reality, he was building military bases and training grounds for the coming war. "Colony development proceeding on schedule," he reported to his Council liaison, a floating jellyfish-like being named Flux. "Agricultural sectors are achieving 70% of projected output." "Excellent," Flux replied. "The Council is pleased with human progress in the outer territories." But hidden beneath the colony's agricultural domes were weapons factories and training facilities. Human settlers who had volunteered to be colonists were actually some of Earth's best soldiers and engineers. They were preparing for the largest military operation in human history. The resistance network had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. Keth had introduced human agents to survivors from 8 different conquered species. Each group brought unique knowledge and capabilities. The Zalani had shared their advanced shipbuilding techniques, allowing humans to construct vessels that could match Council technology. The Kithira provided biological weapons that could target specific alien physiologies. The Vorthak contributed stealth technology that made ships nearly invisible to Council sensors. "We have contacts on 17 Council worlds," reported Commander Dalsu during a secret holographic conference. "Some are former species hiding in underground movements. Others are Council species that are unhappy with the current leadership." "What kind of support can we expect?" Admiral Yun-Su asked. "More than we hoped. The Council's rule isn't as stable as they pretend. Many species are tired of being exploited. They're ready to rebel if they think they have a chance of winning." Dr. Haiwan had been working with alien linguists to solve the communication challenges of coordinating such a diverse resistance. "We've developed a new translation protocol that can't be intercepted by Council systems," she reported. "It uses ancient languages and cultural references that their computers don't understand." The plan that emerged was ambitious beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. Instead of trying to defend Earth against Council invasion, they would launch simultaneous attacks across the galaxy. While the Council was preparing for Phase 2 of human integration, the Resistance would strike at the heart of their empire. "We get one chance," Admiral Yun-Su told the assembled Resistance leaders. "If we fail, they'll never underestimate us again. But if we succeed, we can break their control over hundreds of worlds." The first step was rescuing the human prisoners on the Council station. Ambassador Ye Jin, Dr. So Min, and communications specialist Ji Woo had been held for 2 months, but they had not been idle. Using skills learned from their resistance contacts, they had managed to map the station's security systems and identify weaknesses. Guard rotation changes every 6 hours, Ye Jin whispered to her cellmates. During the shift change, there's a 12-minute window when the detention level is less heavily monitored. I've been watching the security cameras, So Min added. They have blind spots near the auxiliary maintenance shafts. If we can reach those areas, I can override the door locks, Ji Woo said. The Council's security systems are designed to keep prisoners in, not to prevent sophisticated electronic intrusion from within. Their rescue came from an unexpected source. Keth had convinced several Alteran survivors to volunteer for what amounted to a suicide mission. Using a captured Council shuttle, they approached the station during a scheduled supply run. The shuttle's identification codes were legitimate, stolen from a Council database by Dr. Do Yan's cyber warfare team. By the time station security realized something was wrong, the Alteran commandos were already inside. "This is for Altair," Keth whispered as he and his team moved through the station's corridors, their movements nearly silent despite their advanced age. They had been preparing for this moment for 40 years. The rescue itself took less than 20 minutes. While the Alterans created diversions throughout the station, the human prisoners executed their escape plan. By the time Council security forces reached the detention level, they found empty cells and no trace of how the prisoners had vanished. "Impossible," Coordinator Veltar hissed when he received the report. "How did they penetrate our security?" "The humans had help," Chancellor Crix observed, studying the security footage. "These movement patterns are not human. Someone else was involved." "The Resistance survivors," Veltar realized. "They've made contact with the humans. This changes." "Nothing," Crix said. "Phase 2 proceeds as scheduled, but perhaps we should accelerate the timeline." "Agreed. Begin the final integration in 2 months instead of 5. If the humans want to resist, we'll crush that resistance before it can spread." But the Council leadership had made a critical error. By accelerating their timeline, they had given the resistance exactly what they needed, proof that their actions were having an effect. More importantly, they had revealed their greatest weakness: impatience. As the rescued humans were taken to safety aboard hidden resistance ships, Admiral Yun Su received confirmation that all resistance cells were ready to proceed. "Phase 1 complete," she announced to the secret command center. "All units report ready for Operation Liberation." The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented in Council history, a coordinated rebellion involving dozens of species across hundreds of star systems. The Council had maintained their empire through carefully orchestrated deception and the illusion of invincibility. In just a few days, that illusion would be shattered forever. The word that would echo across the galaxy was already chosen, already prepared for broadcast to every oppressed world and enslaved population. The Council had deceived humanity, and humanity was about to give them something in return. A lesson in what happened when you awakened a species that had never learned to submit. The attack began at exactly 14 Laos Galactic Standard Time across 17 star systems simultaneously. Admiral Yun Su stood in the hidden command center beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, watching as status reports flooded in from resistance cells across the galaxy. "EMP charges deployed in Sector 7, reported Captain Yun. "Council fleet disabled. Quantum virus active in the Vega system," Dr. Doyan announced. "Their communication network is down." Zilani forces engaging Council ships at Rigel Station. Commander Dal Su added from his position 50 light-years away, but the most important target was the Council's home system, where their massive command station orbited the planet Nexus Prime. This was where Coordinator Veltar and Chancellor Crix controlled their empire of enslaved worlds. Captain Hansol commanded the lead assault ship, a hybrid vessel built using human engineering and Zilani technology. His crew included humans, Alterans, Zolani, and members of 6 other liberated species. Council forces are scrambling to respond, reported Navigator Min Su from the sensor station. But their ships can't coordinate without their quantum network. That won't last long, Han Sol replied. They'll switch to backup communications within the hour. We need to hit them fast and hard. The space around Nexus Prime erupted in brilliant flashes as human EMP weapons disabled one Council ship after another. The aliens had never faced weapons specifically designed to exploit their technology's weaknesses. Engineer Taeho's calculations had been perfect. The electromagnetic pulses that barely affected human electronics completely crippled the Council's quantum-based systems. Ships that had seemed invincible suddenly found themselves floating helplessly in space. But the real target wasn't the Council's military forces. It was their command station itself. Ambassador Ye Jin, now wearing combat armor instead of diplomatic robes, led a boarding party onto the massive structure. With her were Dr. So Min, communications specialist Ji Woo, and 50 of Earth's best Special Forces soldiers. Remember the mission, Ye Jin said as their assault shuttle approached the station's docking bay. We need to reach the central communication hub and broadcast our message to every world in Council space. The station's defenses had been designed to repel external attacks, not internal infiltration. The boarding party moved through corridors that Ye Jin and her team knew intimately from their months as prisoners. Security checkpoint ahead, reported Sergeant Lee, scanning around the corner with her sensor equipment. 4 guards, all armed. Standard Council weapons, Dr. So Min observed. Energy-based, powered by quantum cells. If our EMP charges worked on their ships, Ji Woo activated a small device she had built from captured Council technology. The pulse was much smaller than the ship-killing weapons, but it was enough to disable the guards' equipment. Human projectile weapons finished what the EMP had started. They fought their way through 3 levels of the station, encountering increasingly desperate resistance. Council security forces were well-trained and dangerous, but they had never faced opponents who understood their technology better than they did. Central Hub is just ahead, Ye Jin announced as they reached the core of the station. Ji Woo, how long do you need to access their communication system? 5 minutes to break their encryption, Ji Woo replied. Another 3 to upload our message and set it for galaxy-wide broadcast. You've got it, Ye Jin said. Everyone else defensive positions. They'll throw everything they have at us once they realize what we're doing. The next 8 minutes were the longest of their lives. Council security forces poured into the communication hub from every entrance, armed with weapons that could cut through steel like paper. But human tactics and determination kept them at bay just long enough. Upload complete, Ji Woo shouted over the sound of weapons fire. Broadcasting in 30 seconds. Throughout the galaxy, on every world controlled by the Council, communication systems suddenly activated without authorization. The message went out to billions of beings across thousands of planets, broadcast in every language the Resistance had been able to acquire, but the message itself was simpler than anyone had expected. Ambassador Ye Jin's voice, clear and strong, spoke a single word that echoed across the stars. Freedom. That one word, transmitted in the languages of every species the Council had conquered, carried with it everything the Resistance stood for. It was followed by a data package containing proof of the Council's deceptions, evidence of their crimes against conquered species, and most importantly, coordinates for Resistance cells on every world. The effect was immediate and devastating. On worlds that had been subjugated for centuries, populations that had forgotten they were once free suddenly remembered. The word freedom became a rallying cry that spread faster than the Council could suppress it. Impossible, Coordinator, Veltar hissed as he watched the communication logs from his command center. How did they penetrate our most secure systems? The humans have help from our former subjects, Chancellor Crix observed, its crystal body shifting to an angry red color. And they understand our technology better than we anticipated. Then we crush them now, before this rebellion spreads. Further, Veltar declared, activate the domination protocol, destroy the human homeworld as an example to others. But when Veltar tried to access the Council's ultimate weapon, a planet-killing device hidden in the outer system, nothing happened. The quantum communication network that controlled their most powerful weapons had been completely compromised by Dr. Do-Yon's virus. "Sir," reported a Council technician, its voice trembling with fear. "The domination protocol is not responding. None of our strategic weapons are responding." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the word freedom was spreading like wildfire. Enslaved Alterans on mining worlds seized their equipment and turned it into weapons. Zilani shipbuilders in council yards began sabotaging the vessels they had been forced to construct. Kythera scientists in research facilities started destroying the biological weapons they had been compelled to create. Captain Hansol watched from his ship's bridge as the space around Nexus Prime filled with vessels bearing the symbols of dozens of liberated species. The resistance network that had started with a few scattered survivors had become a galaxy-spanning alliance. "Admiral Yunsu, this is Captain Hansol," he reported to Earth. "The Council's command structure is collapsing. Coordinator Veltar and Chancellor Crix are trapped on the station with no way to communicate with their forces." "Understood," came the reply from Earth. "What's the status of our boarding team?" Hansol looked at the displays showing the fierce battle still raging inside the station. "Ambassador Yejin's team is holding the communication hub, but they're under heavy attack. The Council is throwing everything they have at that position." "Tell them to hold just a little longer," Admiral Yunsu said. "Phase 3 is about to begin." Phase 3 was the culmination of everything the Resistance had planned. While the galaxy erupted in rebellion, hidden human fleets were moving toward the Council's primary worlds, not to destroy them, but to liberate them. The Council had built their empire on the foundation of conquered species. Now those same species were rising up to reclaim their freedom, and at the center of it all was that single word, broadcast from the heart of the Council's own command station: freedom. It was a word the Council had tried to make extinct, a concept they had systematically destroyed on world after world. But humanity had given it back to the galaxy, and now nothing could stop its spread. The Council's perfect record of conquest was broken. Their empire of lies was crumbling. And in the communication hub of their command station, Ambassador Yejin smiled as she listened to reports of uprisings on dozens of worlds. One word had been enough. One word that carried the hopes and dreams of every species that had ever refused to surrender. One word that reminded the galaxy what was possible when people fought for something greater than themselves. The revolution had begun, and there was no going back. The word freedom spread across the galaxy like a quantum wildfire, reaching every corner of Council space within hours of the initial broadcast. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, Alteran miners who had worked in forced labor for 40 years suddenly stopped their machines and turned to face their Council overseers. "Vel Nok Theron," the lead miner said in ancient Alteran, words that hadn't been spoken in decades. "We choose freedom." The uprising began with simple tools: mining equipment, construction gear, anything that could be turned into a weapon. But as word spread, it became clear that the Resistance had been planning for this moment much longer than anyone realized. On the shipyard world of Vega Prime, Zilani engineers who had been forced to build Council warships for 2 centuries suddenly began a coordinated sabotage operation. Master Shipwright Prex, thought dead by the Council for over a decade, emerged from hiding to lead the revolt. "Today we reclaim our craft," Prex announced to the assembled workers. "Today we build ships for freedom, not for oppression." Within hours, the shipyards that had produced the Council's most feared vessels were turning out modified ships designed for liberation fleets. The Zilani had spent generations learning every weakness in Council ship design, and now they used that knowledge against their former masters. But the most significant uprising occurred on Nexus Prime itself, the Council's capital world. Dr. Somin's biological analysis of Council species had revealed something important. Many of the loyal species in Council space were actually descendants of conquered peoples who had forgotten their own history. The Thraxians aren't native Council supporters, she had explained during the resistance planning sessions. Their genetic markers show they're descended from the Kethmaran civilization that was conquered 800 years ago. They've been made to forget their own heritage. When the Liberation broadcast reached Nexus Prime, something unexpected happened. The genetic memories buried in the Thraxian population began to resurface. Ancient songs, forgotten languages, suppressed, cultural traditions. All of it came flooding back as if a dam had burst. Chancellor Crix watched in horror from the Council Command Center as its own capital world erupted in chaos. "How is this possible?" it demanded. "The Thraxians have been loyal for 8 centuries. "Apparently not as loyal as we believed," Coordinator Veltar replied grimly. His serpentine form coiled with tension as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. 17 systems in open revolt. 43 others showing signs of unrest. Our entire communication network compromised. "What about the reserve fleets?" Crix asked. "Cut off. Without quantum communications, they can't coordinate effectively. And the human EMP weapons have disabled most of our ships in the affected systems." The scale of the rebellion was beyond anything in galactic history. It wasn't just humans fighting the Council, it was every species the Council had ever conquered, all rising up simultaneously. The resistance network that had seemed so small and scattered revealed itself to be a galaxy-spanning organization that had been quietly preparing for this moment for decades. Commander Dalsu led the liberation of the Alteran home system, where the surviving population had been scattered across labor camps on 12 different moons. Using intelligence provided by Keth and other Alteran survivors, human and alien forces struck at every camp simultaneously. "This is Commander Dalsu to all Alteran camps," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Your long night is ending. Altair is free." The response was overwhelming. Alterans who had never seen their home world, children and grandchildren of the original conquered population, joined the liberation forces with a fury that surprised even their human allies. 40 years, one elderly Alteran warrior said to Dalsu as they stood together on the bridge of a captured council ship. 40 years I dreamed of this moment." "It's not over yet," Dalsu replied. "We still have to hold what we've taken." But holding the liberated territories proved easier than expected. The Council's military doctrine had been built around preventing rebellions, not suppressing them once they started. Their forces were scattered across thousands of systems, designed to maintain order through surveillance and intimidation rather than direct combat. Engineer Teho's EMP weapons had crippled their ability to coordinate responses, while Dr. Do-Yan's computer virus had corrupted their communication networks. Individual Council commanders found themselves cut off from Central Command, unsure whether to retreat, attack, or try to negotiate. "Their biggest strength has become their biggest weakness," Admiral Yun-Su observed from the Earth Command Center. "They controlled so much territory that they can't defend it all at once." The human fleets that had been hidden throughout the preparation phase now revealed themselves in system after system. Ships built using Zalani techniques and armed with human weapons emerged from asteroid fields and hidden bases to support local uprisings. Captain Han Sol coordinated the assault on the Council's fortress worlds, heavily defended systems that served as regional command centers. These weren't liberation missions, but direct military strikes designed to cripple the Council's ability to mount counterattacks. "Fortress Gamma is heavily shielded," reported his tactical officer as they approached the fortified moon. "Standard weapons won't penetrate." "Then we don't use standard weapons," Han Sol replied. He had learned much from his alien allies about creative problem-solving. "Launch the modified mining charges." The mining charges were actually Alteran demolition devices that had been modified by Kythera scientists to disrupt quantum shield harmonics. When they detonated against the fortress's defenses, the supposedly impregnable shields collapsed like soap bubbles. Impossible, the fortress commander broadcast as human ships poured through the breach. Those shields have never been penetrated. There's a first time for everything, Han Sol replied. But perhaps the most important battle was taking place on the council station itself, where Ambassador Ye Jin and her team still held the communication hub. They had been under siege for 6 hours, fighting off wave after wave of council security forces. Ammunition running low, reported Sergeant Lee, checking her weapons power cell. And they're bringing up heavy weapons. How much longer do we need to hold? Dr. Somin asked, bandaging a wounded soldier. Ji Woo looked up from her equipment. The virus is still spreading through their network. Every minute we hold this position, more systems come under our control. Then we hold, Ye Jin said simply. No matter what it costs. The Council's final assault on the communication hub was led by Coordinator Veltar himself. The massive serpentine being moved through the station's corridors with deadly grace, accompanied by the Council's elite guard. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick, Veltar broadcast to the humans. Continue this futile resistance and you will suffer as no species has suffered before. We have a counteroffer, Ye Jin replied over the communication system. Surrender now, and we'll allow you to stand trial for your crimes instead of executing you on sight. Veltar's laugh was like the hiss of escaping gas. You think you have won because you've started a few riots? The Council has survived rebellions before. We will survive this one. Not like this one, Ye Jin said. Every species you've conquered knows the truth now. Every world you've enslaved is rising up. Your empire isn't just cracking, it's shattering. As if to emphasize her point, the station shuddered as explosions echoed through its structure. The Thraxian uprising on Nexus Prime had reached the orbital installations, and Council loyalists were fighting street by street to maintain control. Sir, a Council technician reported to Veltar. We're receiving surrender requests from 17 Fortress commanders. They're requesting permission to negotiate terms with the rebels. Denied, Veltar roared. No negotiations, no surrender. The Council does not bow to inferior species. But even as he spoke, more reports came in. The Kythera homeworld had been liberated. The Zalani shipyards were now producing vessels for the rebellion. 3 more fortress worlds had fallen to combined human-alien fleets. The galaxy was witnessing something unprecedented, a successful rebellion against the Council's 1,000-year reign. And at the center of it all was the single word that Ambassador Ye Jin had broadcast from the heart of their empire: freedom. It was a word that the Council had tried to erase from galactic memory. Now it burned bright in every system they had once controlled, carried by the voices of species they had thought broken and defeated. The Council's perfect record was more than broken. It was obliterated. Their empire of lies and deception was collapsing so rapidly that even they couldn't track all the uprisings. And in the communication hub of their command station, surrounded by the sounds of approaching enemy forces, Ambassador Ye Jin smiled. The word had done its work. Now came the harder task, building something better from the ashes of tyranny. The siege of the Council's command station entered its final phase as liberation forces breached the outer defensive perimeters. Captain Han Sol led the assault through corridors filled with the debris of a crumbling empire. Behind him came soldiers from a dozen different species, united by the simple word that had ignited a galaxy-wide revolution. Ambassador Ye Jin, this is Captain Han Sol, he transmitted to the communication hub. We're 3 levels away from your position. Can you hold? A little longer? We're not going anywhere, came Ye Jin's reply, though her voice sounded tired. The virus has infected 90% of their network. A few more minutes and we'll have complete control of their communication systems. In the Council's main command center, Coordinator Veltar and Chancellor Crix faced the collapse of everything they had built. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, not just of military defeats, but of the complete breakdown of their social control systems. The Vorthak have declared independence, reported a trembling council aide. The Nexari are demanding reparations for 3 centuries of exploitation. Even the Keldan hegemony is questioning their loyalty. Chancellor Crix's crystal form had shifted to a deep purple, a color that indicated despair in its species. How many systems remain under full council control? 17, sir. Down from over 400 this morning. Veltar coiled his massive form around the central command throne, his yellow eyes burning with frustrated rage. This is impossible. One primitive species cannot destroy 1,000 years of careful expansion. It's not just one species, observed Dr. So Min, who had broken away from Ye Jin's team to reach the command center ahead of the main assault force. She stood in the doorway, flanked by Alteran and Zalani warriors. It's every species you've ever lied to, every world you've enslaved, every people you thought you had broken. The human scientist, Veltar hissed. How did you escape the communication hub? Same way we escaped your prison cells, Somin replied. You never understood humans well enough to contain us properly. You thought we were like the other species. You conquered, passive, willing to accept authority, ready to trade freedom for security. All intelligent species eventually submit to superior force, Chancellor Crix declared, though its voice lacked conviction. No, said a new voice from behind Somin. Ambassador Ye Jin entered the command center, her diplomatic uniform torn and scorched from hours of combat. All species eventually submit to your lies, but once they know the truth, once they remember what freedom means, your power becomes meaningless. The communication hub was secure, Jiwoo reported over the intercom. The virus had completed its work, giving the Liberation Forces control over the entire Council communication network. Across the galaxy, resistance cells that had been operating in darkness suddenly had access to real-time intelligence and coordination. It's over, Ye Jin said quietly. Your empire is finished. But Veltar was not ready to surrender. With a roar of fury, he activated the station's self-destruct sequence. If the Council falls, then everything falls with it. We will not be humiliated by inferior beings. The station began to shake as internal explosions echoed through its structure. Emergency lights flashed, and automated warnings announced the countdown to total destruction. 12 minutes to station destruction, the computer announced in the cold, efficient voice of Council technology. Can you stop it? Captain Han Sol asked Dr. So Min as his assault team secured the command center. Not from here, she replied, studying the control panels. The self-destruct is controlled by quantum locks that would take hours to break. Then we evacuate, Han Sol decided. We've accomplished the mission. The word is out, the network is compromised, and the galaxy is free. But Chancellor Crix had one final card to play. Evacuate if you wish, it said, its crystal form shifting to a malevolent red. But know that the station's destruction will trigger the Terminus Protocol. Every world that declared independence today will be sterilized by automated weapons platforms hidden throughout the galaxy. The humans and their allies exchanged worried glances. It made sense that the Council would have a final failsafe, a way to punish rebellion even after their defeat. How many worlds? Ye Jin asked. All of them, Crix replied with something like satisfaction. Every planet that has hosted resistance activity, every system that has harbored rebel forces, billions will die to pay for your revolution. You're bluffing, Engineer Taeho said from the doorway, where he had been studying the station's technical systems. I've been monitoring the quantum network traffic. There are no signals going out to automated weapons platforms. Crix's color shifted to uncertainty. The Terminus Protocol operates independently of our communication network. No, it doesn't, Taeho continued. connecting his portable equipment to the command center systems. Every council system relies on quantum communication for coordination. The virus has infected those signals too. Your doomsday weapons are just as disabled as everything else. As if to confirm his words, reports began coming in from liberated worlds. The automated defense platforms that should have been sterilizing rebel systems were instead shutting down or being captured by local resistance forces. Impossible, Veltar whispered. The fail-safes were built into the deepest levels of our network architecture. Built by the same Kithara scientists you enslaved, Dr. Somin pointed out. The same ones who have been part of our resistance network for years. Did you really think they wouldn't leave backdoors in systems they were forced to create? The final piece of the Council's control structure crumbled as the truth became clear. Even their ultimate weapons had been compromised by the very people they had oppressed. The empire built on deception had been brought down by those who knew its secrets best. 8 minutes to station destruction, the computer announced. Shut it down, Hansol ordered. I can't, Veltar replied, though his voice had lost its arrogance. The self-destruct cannot be aborted once activated. It was designed to prevent exactly this situation. Then we leave, Yejin decided. We've done what we came to do. As the liberation forces prepared to evacuate, communications specialist Jiwoo made one final broadcast to the galaxy. Her voice carried across the quantum network to every liberated world, every freed species, every being who had heard the word freedom and chosen to fight. People of the galaxy, she announced, the Council's reign of deception is over. Their command station is destroyed, their fleets are scattered, and their lies have been exposed. But our work is not finished. We must build something better in place of what we have torn down. The evacuation ships pulled away from the dying station as its structure began to collapse. Veltar and Krix chose to stay behind, unable to face a galaxy where their authority meant nothing. The massive station that had symbolized council power for centuries became a brief star as its fusion reactors overloaded. In the months that followed, the real work began. Ambassador Ye Jin found herself at the center of negotiations that brought together hundreds of liberated species. The Galactic Liberation Alliance that emerged was nothing like the Council. It was built on voluntary cooperation, mutual respect, and the shared commitment to never again allow one group to dominate all others. We must be vigilant, Yejin addressed the first Congress of Free Worlds, held on the former council capital of Nexus Prime. Freedom is not a destination. It's a choice we must make every day. The galaxy that emerged from the revolution was chaotic, sometimes fractious, often difficult to govern, but it was free. Species that had been forced into submission rediscovered their own cultures. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources began to heal. Technologies that had been hoarded by the Council were shared freely among all species. Humanity took its place not as a dominant power, but as one voice among many in the galactic community. Earth became a symbol of the revolution, but humans were careful not to let that symbolism turn into another form of dominance. We gave them one word, Admiral Yun Su reflected during a memorial service for those who had died in the revolution. But they gave us something much more valuable in return, the chance to be part of something greater than ourselves. The word freedom had indeed been enough to bring down a 1,000-year empire. But as the liberated galaxy would learn, building freedom was a much harder task than winning it. It required constant vigilance, endless compromise, and the courage to trust former enemies to become allies. In the end, that trust proved to be humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. Not their weapons or their technology or their tactics, but their willingness to believe that former slaves could become free citizens, that conquered species could become equal partners, and that the word freedom meant the same thing to every being capable of understanding it. The Council's deception had failed because they underestimated the power of truth. The galaxy they had controlled through lies was now united by something much stronger. The simple understanding that all beings, regardless of species or origin, deserved the right to choose their own destiny. And in the great archives of the Galactic Liberation Alliance, in every language of every free world, one word was inscribed as the foundation of their new society: freedom.